Hi, Nicholas. Thank you for joining us. Could you
Thank you.
please tell our students a little bit about yourself and your job?
Sure. So I am 29 years old. I graduated 10 years ago, no, 11 years ago this year from Jamison High. Since then, I have sort of traveled the world studying music and performing in musicals and concerts, stuff like that. I now hold the position, I'm heading up the musical theatre department at the Australian Institute of Music down on the Melbourne campus. I moved from Sydney to Melbourne this year. But I sort of have a variety of different jobs, but all in the sphere of music and music creation. So being that in the music industry, one must be able to do many different things rather than just be a singer. That was certainly my main focus when I was at Jamison, was just to, I only really cared about music, to be honest, and music and drama. So that was, yeah, singing was my main sort of goal. And then I learned early on, because Australia is so tiny, that one had to be far more well-rounded in the music sphere in order to have a career as a musician. So got far more into musical direction, playing the piano, orchestrating, which is writing all the orchestral parts for the orchestra, composition, and then production. In the most recent years, it's become more, I'm producing stuff, which is wonderful. But the main thing of that I've done is a show called Broadway Reimagined, which I own, where I work with a bunch of arrangers on some musical theatre songs that we musically reimagine. So, for example, we take Be Our Guest from Beauty and the Beast, and we do it as a jazz bebop number with a big 8-piece band and 4 singers. And so that show's been travelling the world on cruise ships. And we're about to announce 4 big concerts this week in Sydney with Drive-In Entertainment, which will have that, and I'll be the conductor of those, and I'll also sing. Yeah, that show's my favourite actually at the moment. That sort of encompasses everything. But another project is I have my opera. I was commissioned to write an opera called Emily and Voltaire, about Voltaire and his mistress Emily de Châtelet. I was commissioned by Fine Music Australia to write that opera last year. So I did, and then it was one of 4 that was selected to be developed by the International Puccini Opera Development Program, which took place in Lucca, Italy, which is where Puccini, who wrote Madame Butterfly and La Bohème, it's where he premiered all of his works. So I went over to Italy for 5 weeks, and we developed the opera there, and then came back. And now Opera Australia are the main producers of it. So I've been working with them, and we're making the opera straight to film, which is really exciting. We have Philip Quast as our director, who's wonderful. I'm writing it for a friend of mine, Julie Goodwin, who I met during my years as a soloist in a school spectacular, and the Talent Development Project as well, which I got into from the advice of my music department at Jamison High.
Well,
Yeah.
Nicholas, this is incredible. I don't know how you can actually answer the next question with the man of your talent, but what would a normal day look like for you? Is there such a thing?
Yes, no. It's actually my favorite thing about my work is every day is really different from the last. As soon as I find that something is monotonous and the same, I tend to steer clear from it. I think the most stable thing is obviously my position at the Australian Institute of Music. So in recent years, when I was in Sydney, I worked at AIM, it's the nickname, AIM, NIDA, and the International Screen Academy. So teaching all things like drama and acting scene to song, orchestration. I did my master's in orchestration for film and TV, so I teach in the composition department as well. So every 3 months, sort of every trimester of the year, I tend to go into different departments of the whole music university. I tend to like composition focus this mainly musical theatre at the moment. So I get to get my hands wet in a lot of different subjects and focuses of music, which I find really rewarding. And of course, being a teacher, as you will know, it changes every day because you never know what the students are going to come out with, and you never know the level that the students will be at, and everyone learns so differently. So I'm constantly learning to adapt to try and get the best out of the particular student that's in front of me. And I find that to be challenging and rewarding and different every day. But then today, for example, we're in exam week, so I will be marking voice exams via Zoom, which is interesting. And then I will be doing a chart tonight for Broadway Reimagined. And then I will monitor a rehearsal for Broadway Reimagined over Zoom for my cast that are in Sydney. And then tomorrow morning I will be hearing mixes of the orchestra from the opera that have been recorded before we went into lockdown. So it's sort of just like, and everyone in the music industry will understand what I'm talking about here. It's just, it's so different. Every day is different, and there are so many little jobs, which sort of, as I get older, become bigger and bigger jobs, or at least the responsibility becomes bigger. But it's just that principle of chipping away at little things.
Yes. I know, amazing. Look, you've mentioned a few things, but how could you describe the way in which you have gone about reaching these positions that you hold?
I think anything in the music business is about who you know. It's about connections, and then having the ability to back it up with skill. But I think the important thing to note about music is it is skill. It's not a gift. I'm a pretty firm believer in we have a born amount of talent, I guess. Let's say like a God-given voice, but it's your responsibility to harness that and train things, even like confidence. People that will assume that would be a gift. And that would just, they're a really confident person. Confidence is a skill. Simple exposure therapy to that, you will get better at doing it. It's facing a fear and getting better and better. You become more comfortable. So hard work. I mean, a lot of the time I get, which is very nice, of course, a compliment after I sing on stage or something like, oh, very talented. I'm like, thank you. It's sort of a double-edged sword though, because I go, I was rubbish once upon a time. I mean, I have on DVD a recording of like my Year 7 performance at Jefferson singing What About Me? It was awful. Like if I heard a kid singing like that, I'd struggle to encourage it. But thankfully, I was encouraged to pursue it, and someone saw a ray of hope in there, and then a lot of hard work. So I got a few scholarships after high school. Straight after Year 12, I got a scholarship to study conducting on the West End production of Les Mis. So I went over and did that. And then a few years later, I came back. A musical of mine won Best New Australian Work at New Musicals Australia, and we did that in Melbourne and Sydney. Then while doing that, I got another scholarship to go over to Broadway from the Talent Development Project, and worked with Stephen Schwartz, who wrote Wicked and Pippin and Godspell, Prince of Egypt, and Alan Menken, who wrote every other Disney musical, on 4 new musicals that were heading to Broadway. And I originally did that as a performer. Now I go back every year to New York or LA and do those workshops. Last year I was the music director of the first Australian musical to be workshopped there as part of this program. And they develop musicals that have the aim to go to Broadway. So it's for the benefit of the writer more than anyone else. Hopefully one of my musicals will be developed there one day as part of that program. That's one of my goals. Just sort of continual hard work and study. I just never stop learning, which is, I think that's how I get to being where I am. In my position at AIM, I think it helped that I went to AIM. I was a student there, and at the same time as being a student there, I was also working professionally as a singer. So it seemed to make sense that I would one day become part of the faculty, because I also really love teaching. I really love the just that process of encouraging music in young people.
Well, you've mentioned teachers, and everyone at Jamison High School is so proud of the things that you have achieved, Nicholas. It's absolutely, and I'm just so enthralled listening to your story here. Are there any things that you'd like to mention about Jamison High School that helped you maybe along with your career path? You mentioned the Year 7 teacher spotting your talent.
Yes, I mean, I know she doesn't work there anymore, but Susan Mudge was my sort of main music teacher that guided me through. And we also had Susan Yearland, who was wonderful, and she sort of headed up the main vocal side of stuff at the high school at the time. And then later, Karen Burke came on, and of course John Ledbetter, who was the head of music when I was there, from like Year 7 to 10, I think. They were all really integral for my early music development. I mean, it was Mrs. Mudge who first taught me, and I remember the lesson in Year 8 in keyboard skills, taught me just how, like, the circle of fifths, and how you can make any sort of chord progression sound tonal and nice. And after that, I did not stop writing. And now I'm writing every day, and I'm ever so grateful that they were able to sort of harness that. And I think they really not bent the rules, but everyone was very flexible, including the principal at the time. When it got to my HSE at the end of Year 10, and we were deciding like where I was going to go, Music 1 or Music 2, they were really flexible, and they knew I wouldn't really be fulfilled in Music 1, and I really wanted to do Music 2, but there was no one on the faculty that was able to teach that for timetabling and whatever reason, and the sheer fact that there was only one person who was going to be able to do it, and no one runs a class for one person. But I remember having a meeting with the principal and Susan Mudge and John Ledbetter, and he'd retired at the time. He'd retired the year before, but he came out of retirement just to come in at like 7 o'clock every a few days a week and teach me the Music 2 curriculum one-on-one and music extension. And without that, I mean, it was my highest mark. It was like a 96 or something in for my HSC for both Music 2 and music extension. And I would not have been able to do it. And I wouldn't have been able to stay at Jamison either if it wasn't for that. I would have had to have gone to another school to harness the advanced music program. But they were really flexible, which I'm ever so grateful for. Because it also kept me in the public school system, which was super important to me because I was also involved with the Talent Development Project, which had that direct link to the School Spectacular. And it does sort of set you up with that network. That's going to be your network for your career. So, yeah.
Well,
Did that answer your question?
That was beautiful. No, Nicholas, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. Look, I'm pretty sure you've answered this in your other questions, but any quick bits of advice for young people that would like a career similar to yours?
Absolutely. Study. It's the most important thing with music is you can never stop learning. And I think music is one of those things that is so human and primal. Before we could speak, we sang. It's a language. It's a universal language within itself, and it's everybody has the ability to do it. But it is also a skill, and it is a craft, and it's not one of those subjects that you can take as take a la carte and go, like it's a bludge or we'll just have a sing along. We can smell that a mile off, and it doesn't sell. It is a business. It's a very interesting business, and it's super rewarding. Every day, my currency between performer and audience is empathy. It's emotion. It's how we feel. And that's a wonderful gift, I think, to be able to have as an occupation. I don't every day sit at a desk and stare at computers. I do at the moment, but who doesn't? but generally we're in the business of creating energy and inspiration, and it never ceases to amaze me that you can never learn enough. You can never create something that's been exactly done before. Bach said, melody is like the waves of the ocean. You know, all of them are unique and they never stop being unique. And I think music's ability to connect with people is what we're going to really rely on coming out of huge sort of global events like the one we're going through at the moment. But I think giving it its due respect, you know, and studying it properly, that would be the best advice I think I could give.
Well, thank you, Nicholas. Thank you so much for your time. Such a busy man to give up all this time for the students at Jamison. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.